The following is paid programming. Welcome to Something More with Chris Boyd, certified financial planner practitioner and founder of Asset Management Resources, LLC, a registered investment advisor firm. We call it Something More because we like to talk not only about those important dollar and cents issues, but also the quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Here he is, your fulfillment facilitator, your partner in prosperity, advising clients across the country, your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of Something More with Chris Boyd. My name's Jeff Perry. I have the pleasure of sitting in for this segment for Chris Boyd. And I also have the pleasure of welcoming back Mark Skala of the Cape and Islands United Way. Mark, you have been on the show before. Thank you for making the time today to join us again.
I'm happy to be here, Jeff, and I'm sure you will fill in amply while Chris is away on vacation.
Yes, I'm glad he's on vacation.
I am too.
You know, we all need that time away from the trials and tribulations of our work and as
in
CEO,
the world. In the world,
and of the world. I hope he's, it's tough to get away from the trials and tribulations of the world, especially. Especially lately with the issues in the Middle East and the attack on Israel and all that means to the people that we know and some people that we love who are there. And it's impactful. I didn't intend to start the show like this, but it is impactful on our psyches and our well-being and our concerns, not only about the people that we know and a place that we love, but also just about our own kind of anxiety and things that are happening, and it does affect people.
Yeah, and people, they see the tragedy unfolding, and they see the women and the young children and the men and the suffering, and it's hard not to let that impact your feelings and your emotions. So I feel like people's emotions are pretty frail these days.
Yep, I think that's accurate. And so as technology improves and the access to information, not only because we have more media outlets, but like the ability for reporters, for example, to report instantly back with video and, personal stories has never been more than it is today, just unfiltered information. So that certainly adds to that. Powerful.
Without a doubt.
Right.
And I think that there's this mentality in the media, if you will, is to hurry up and get it out,
Yes.
And I don't think there's as much thought going into how is this story really going to play out.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. First is, the old saying, if it bleeds, it leads, right? So if it's sensational, and they'll put a little clip in there like, this may be disturbing to some viewers, which is said so much now that you don't even really pay attention to it.
You don't. And I think what's, that feeling, people are feeling that here on the Cape, and I think it's one of the reasons why you see the Cape and Islands United Way investing more of our resources into mental wellness and, helping people in that regard, Jeff. We're seeing more and more demand. Certainly the basics are there, but there's more and more demand coming forward to help us with some of these mental health crises that we're facing. And I can see that, a great example. I just had the privilege not too long ago of meeting with a couple of women who are part of the Alzheimer support group, and you forget they were the caregivers of their husbands, and the difficulty they faced. They were losing their loved one and their companion to the disease. And one of the women said to me, I felt like I was on the Titanic. And this program that you funded through the Alzheimer's support was the Carpathia coming to save us. And all it is a respite program to get them. Maybe they can go and get a massage, or maybe they can go and get, their nails done, and it's a support group. And they have found that there is people there who share that experience and can help you through it. And so to me, that is a really rewarding thing to hear, because it is very difficult for people right now on so many fronts.
That's that is one of the most underappreciated parts of. Well, there's a lot to focus on in our opening comments here, but just going off of what you said about caring for someone who has Alzheimer's, dementia, an elderly loved one who needs that extra care. One of the first things that a family member wants to do, and I've seen this, from my life experience, my friends, I've also seen this in my family, is that when, in our case, my mother needed extra care, family members stepped up. Specifically, my sister had this big desire, wonderful desire, out of nothing but love, to step in and be mom's full-time caretaker. And it initially it sounds like, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
But with time and the stresses of doing that for 24/7 or whatever the schedule is, it's so much more than people anticipate. They enter it out of love, maybe obligation, whatever the situation is, but the pressure and the stress and the mental health challenges of the caretaker is what you're talking about.
Yes.
Is really something that, unless you're in it in a personal situation, or you see it in your family, or, of a good friend, you don't really appreciate that caregiver needs attention and rest, as you say, respite from what they're doing, even though it's out of love, even though it's voluntary.
Totally.
They cannot, none of us could do it. So I think that's a wonderful way to help, maybe not the traditional thing that we think about when we think about how are we going to help someone with dementia or Alzheimer's, but this is an important part of that, Mark.
It certainly is. And, I saw it with my own parents as they aged. They both lived into their 90s. And I think I've told you before, I'm fortunate enough to be one of 15 children. And so there was enough of us to go around to support our parents, to ensure that they stayed in their home until the end. But that's not many people have that opportunity. And it is an exhausting job, and they're doing it out of love, as you said, but sometimes they need a little bit more help. And so that's what we've been trying to take a look at. Another great example is like big brothers, big sisters. We had a story of a little brother, and he was telling us that he had no male role model in his life until he met this big brother, and it changed his life. It changed the trajectory of the kid's life, and so we have to remember that it is about meeting basic needs of food and shelter, but there's so much more that has to go into it as a community. And so that's what we're trying to, get across is, sure, housing is the number one impediment to creating wealth for people right now. Food, I don't know if you're the grocery shopper in your house, but I'm the grocery shopper in my house. And I'm staggered every week when I go to the grocery store, Jeff, and see the costs of things.
I am not the grocery shopper. I do consume most of the food that comes in. But, Lisa, my wife Lisa, certainly shares with me, and I see the receipts and such. And I think about exactly what you're talking about regarding food insecurity and food costs. It's, if our food budget goes up 30-40%, it's not good, but it doesn't mean anything substantial to us.
Correct.
But there's a lot of people that don't have that margin in their budget, and they're making some very difficult decisions that, I don't know if this is what you're doing, but where my mind's going is that it just goes back to where we started the conversation about the increases in anxiety and mental health challenges. All these things are related. And, for many, many years, I don't know, decades, there's been an effort to destigmatize mental health.
Correct.
And I think that has had good success, that people are more willing to step out into the public. We've seen it with celebrities and athletes and public figures, which certainly helps the cause. So people are more willing to step out and say, I need help, which is very positive. At the same time that this has happened, this positive side, we've had a significant addiction crisis regarding opiate, heroin, fentanyl. Throw COVID-19 in that and all the mental health challenges, the lockdowns and the disease and the loss of loved ones. I mean, there's a lot going on in the mental health sector. So I'm not surprised. I'm pleasantly not surprised that the United Way of Cape Cod and the Islands is recognized this and is finding ways and partners to assist.
Absolutely. And again, we talk about, our mental wellness. Well, you and I are fortunate enough that, maybe we can take a week or 2 week vacation to decompress from that anxiety. But a lot of people who are struggling, they can't afford to go away. They can't afford some of the tools that you and I have at our disposal to address our mental well-being. And so I think that's a really important a part of it. And it's a challenge. There's no doubt it's a challenge. Fundraising is a real challenge right now, Jeff, because there's really no more middle class anymore, and we're having a good year, but we're having a good year because we've had some very generous angels who are stepping in. But otherwise, the people that you consistently relied on to give you $150 to $250, $300 a year as a contribution, they don't have that available to them right now. And so it's making it difficult, particularly on the Cape, for fundraising. And again, the other challenge on the Cape is 50% of our workforce commutes off Cape.
Yeah, that's a staggering statistic, and I think those two things that you talked about initially about the economic disparities of the Cape, it's becoming wealthier. The Cape's becoming wealthier,
correct,
and the home values are coming up, and more wealthy individuals are coming in, making it their second home or their primary residence,
their third home,
or that. There's plenty of that too. So you see that side of Cape Cod where there's wealth and there's money and has its positive effects on the economy and such. But there's also an underbelly of the Cape, if you will, where people are being pushed out of the Cape or not being, there's no entry point, right? So if you have a child who was born on Cape Cod and raised on Cape Cod and went away to college, got their degree or have their profession, it is very difficult for them to come back and say, I want to establish my life here. I want to work here. And I don't think it's so much a lack of job opportunities as it is a lack of housing opportunities.
Correct.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah, we have 3 sons. My wife and I, between us, from our marriages, we have 3 sons.
Yep.
2 of them don't live here. And the third one, who does live here and he works for his family insurance business, he still lives with us. Because he can't find affordable housing. If I were looking at my house today, I couldn't afford it.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to move into the neighborhood I'm in today if I were looking.
And that's not that's the norm, right? That's not the uncommon thing, right?
Correct. And the other thing that we forget is the fabric of our community is frayed. When you have 50% of your workforce off Cape, they're not invested in the Cape the way the rest of your employees may be. Their life is off Cape, and that's understandable. But it changes the fabric and the dynamic of a community. And so to me, that's very concerning. And whenever we're dealing with housing, and of course, housing is one of our number one challenges on the Cape, and where we invest a lot of resources for our collaborations, because we have to change that dynamic somehow.
Tell us a few examples of what the United Way is doing to assist the efforts in creating and providing affordable housing to.
Sure. Well, we're working obviously with Housing Assistance Corporation. We're also working, though, with the Homeless Prevention Council down in Orleans in the Outer Cape to prevent people from getting homeless and making sure they have the resources and the information they need to stay in their homes. You know, another great example is we pay a grant for a housing navigator. So let's say people are ready to leave a shelter. Yep. And they're ready to move on and start a life outside of a shelter, but they don't have the life experiences they need to sustain and make sure they don't repeat and going back into homelessness. So we provide a housing navigator who works with them. This is how you're going to set up your bills. This is what you're going to do, because we want them to succeed when they leave that shelter. So it's coming on a lot of different fronts that we're trying to address some of the housing issues here. And again, it's way beyond what the Cape and Islands United Way or any one organization on Cape Cod can solve.
Right. It's unique to Cape Cod because you're there.
Yep.
Most of our listeners are there. So you always think about things in your own community, and it's exacerbated by the income disparity and the rising home prices and the transportation issues. A lot of factors unique to Cape Cod, certainly, but there's other challenges in the country and the state. But that housing, I'm sorry, what was the title? Facilitator or
the housing navigator?
Navigator. That's an investment that is going to pay dividends far beyond what you even know. To so many people, when I was a state representative, people would call our office and we would try to assist them with their challenges, and many of them, some of them were related to housing, certainly. And many people, I don't want to say they're not capable. I'll say they need a hand to get through that process. It can seem overwhelming, especially if someone's homeless or has been in a shelter, or maybe there's some migrant issues that maybe we can talk about as well. But people to just navigate, so it's the perfect word, I guess, navigate all the complexities of finding a place, transportation issues, utility issues, credit issues, all of these things that people who could use this assistance at these challenges they're facing. So I think that's probably one of the most efficient and cost-efficient things and long-term beneficial things that you can do.
And I agree. And we're helping multiple people. Do you know what I mean? The navigators. Yeah. So it isn't just one person being helped. It's multiple people being helped when they're ready to leave that shelter and have put in the pieces of their life together. I look at it, any work that I do with the Cape and Islands United Way, I look at it as a leg up and not a hand out. Because you're really trying to give that person a leg up to find themselves and find their own footing.
Absolutely. I touched on the migrant issue as one of the issues that's facing Cape Cod. Can you tell us if the United Way is involved with that issue at all?
Well, I was just on a call yesterday with about 23 different organizations, all trying to figure out the best way to approach this, not from any kind of a political, our border's a mess. We all know that. That's pay grades way above mine. They have to stop the flood. But there are people coming here, and a great example is, in Yarmouth, we have about 25 families at one of the hotels in Yarmouth. It's about 70 people. At the base, Joint Air Base, we have 63 families and about 200 individuals. Many of them are Venezuelan or Haitian. One in Yarmouth, she's pregnant with twins, and she's doing a month, and she was fleeing Haiti. So to me, I'm trying to look at this from a humanitarian point of view and say, okay, I can't fix the border and I can't stop them, but what can I do when they're here? And so we've been trying to, for example, we've been working with a baby center in Hyannis because most of the people are coming with babies or they are pregnant. They don't have diapers. They don't have formula. They don't have car seats. They don't have strollers. And so we've been working with a baby center, for example, to get them some of those supplies. Lots of people are trying to get them English as their second language, and they're trying to get their Social Security cards. But when your basic needs aren't being met, it's hard for you to see all of that. One person, she's a teacher at the DY school system, who is kind of like a liaison because she speaks Spanish and several languages. And, to hear her yesterday say, just about every single person she's working with in Yarmouth is desperate to work because they want to change their life. They want to be a part of something, and so that's important. And so we are working with different agencies to see how we can address it. But, our governor here in Massachusetts just stated yesterday, we're going to be at capacity by the end of this week. Sure. There's no more room. It's a real crisis for sure.
You do have to separate those two things. It's, for the folks who are concerned about illegal immigration and the political situation or the security, issues at the border, they're real.
Oh, without a doubt.
They're definitely real.
And they're not being solved.
That's right.
That's the other issue is they're not being addressed.
But that failure, and we can pass this on to any political party, both any president, many of them, but you really have to separate yourself from that and not ignore what's happening in your community with individuals, with people, with human beings.
Correct.
And all these things, Mark, we only have a couple minutes left of this segment. And I know there's a lot to talk about, and I'm sorry if we don't get to all of it, but I do want to get to this. All these things cost money at the end of the day.
Yep.
So I know you said you have some angels who come forward.
Yes. Yep.
But if someone's just listening to this segment and saying, I used to give to the United Way when I worked at XYZ Corporation, but I'm retired, or I don't think I went to one of their events, but I'd like to do something now or on a regular basis. What should they do?
Well, they can certainly be happy to have them reach out to me directly. They can find my information on our Cape and Islands website. Yep. They can find out how to donate online. We're getting ready to do our annual appeal will be going out. So if somebody gets an annual appeal letter and they can donate $50, $50 makes a difference.
It does.
It's not just the $5,000 and the $10,000. We need the $50 and the $100, to try and make an impact. And I think that is critical. One thing I don't think people know, and I know we're running out of time. One thing people don't know is the United Way has very little workplace campaign. Most people are familiar with the United Way because they gave at work at some point. We have a very small, as you know, employee base here. So less than 10% of our total revenue comes from workplace. It's all individuals and major donors. And all the money we raise stays here.
And that's a great way to end our segment, Mark. You can go to Cape and A-N-D Islands UW United Way, Cape and Islands UW .org, and right on that page is information about all that you're doing. There's a donate button in the top right-hand section. Mark, thank you for
Thank you, Jeff.
What you and everyone at the United Way of Cape Cod and the Islands does, and God bless your work.
Thank you for all you have done to make this a better community.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to Something More. Please tune in next week. Until then, keep striving for something more.
Thank you for listening to Something More with Chris Boyd. Call us for help, whether it's financial planning, portfolio management, insurance concerns, or those quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Whatever's on your mind, visit us at amrfinancial.com or call us toll-free at 866-771-8901 or send us your questions to radio@amrfinancial.com.